I grew up on the tail end of the NES. My best guess is I got the system sometime in 1989, so I was a fairly late adopter. And even then, I only got 1 or 2 games a year until we started finding some cheap at garage sales. I played a few through rentals or at friends' houses, but there were still many iconic titles that always eluded me. These are some games that I never played until I reached my late 20s and finally started collecting games that I either always wanted to play or were just really popular that I, for some reason or another, never played as a child.
Number 7.
Kirbys Adventure. I never played any of the Kirby games growing up. I didn't ask for many games from my Game Boy, so I didn't get in on the ground floor of the series. Even now, I haven't played many of the games, but Kirbys Adventure is one of the few. It was a late NES release, and I already had the Super Nintendo by the time it came out. I never got rid of my NES, or most games for it, but I did stop actively getting more at that point, unless I happened to find an interesting one at a garage sale or flea market. Now I'm just happy to have a nice, accessible platformer that isn't too difficult. Plus, my son has turned into a Kirby fan and really likes playing my copy.
Number 6.
Tecmo Super Bowl. I don't recall this game when it was new, but then again, I was never really into sports at a young age, so that doesn't surprise me. I know at some point in college I became aware of it, but then it still didn't interest me immediately. Interest then finally grew when I began collecting other games, but I definitely knew I wanted a copy to play when I saw that ESPN special about the Tecmo Super Bowl tournament up in Madison. When I finally got copies of Tecmo Bowl and its superior sequel, Tecmo Super Bowl, I enjoyed both for the little time I've played. And of course, I always play at Chicago, even if it's not the best choice.
Number 5.
Ninja Gaiden. Now, this is a game I knew about when I was a kid, but none of my friends had it or ever said anything about it. I also never saw the movie The Wizard and the now iconic line from the film.
Ninja Gaiden! Hey!
For some reason, it also never appealed to me that much. Maybe I had all my ninja fix with the turtles. While I enjoy platforming games, they never were my favorite genre. Usually, playing the Mario or Mega Man games was enough for me that I never sought out many additional games. Eventually, I realized why the game has so much popularity as I watched videos online, and that gave me some interest, so now I own the game. Didn't make it too far due to the difficulty, but at least it's been fun.
Number 4.
Kid Icarus. This was a game I always wanted to play. I knew about the character through the Captain N cartoon, even with him being misnamed Kid Icarus, yet I never had a chance to play the game itself. I never even learned the character's proper name until Pit's inclusion into the Super Smash Bros. Brawl roster. He was fun to play as and solidified my desire to eventually play the original. I got a partial opportunity through the game's Masterpieces section, giving me the ability to play a minute and a half of the NES game. That may be an argument that I played it before acquiring my own copy, but I was still out of college and working full-time. I wasn't yet a video game collector, but I still played it far away from childhood. And when I started collecting, Kid Icarus was one of my first games I bought.
Number 3.
Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! So far out of all the games, I never even had a chance to see them being played. The most would have been images in Nintendo Power. But this one was a little different. I distinctly remember a neighborhood kid at the end of the block playing it when I was down there for some reason. I don't even remember the kid's name. What I do remember is the household had some awesome large Micro Machines sets. That was how I decided to play when I was there. I watched a few bouts, but had no desire to play. Sports weren't my thing. As the years went on, my curiosity began to raise, and I decided I should add the game to my collection. When I finally got a good deal on it and stuck it in my NES, I wasn't able to get far due to the difficulty, but at least I beat Glass Joe.
Number 2.
Castlevania. This was a series I was always aware of, but I never played any of them. I wasn't much of a horror fan, so it didn't grab much interest from me initially. I was especially aware of Dracula's Curse, as it had a lengthy write-up in my first issue of Nintendo Power, but most of my attention went to the Little Nemo article from the same issue. Decades later, I watched the AVGN episode on the series, and that made me realize what I missed out on. The first and third games were some of my first retro game purchases when extending my collection, and I was able to get pretty good deals on them even for the time. Since then I've played through the entirety of the first Castlevania, cheating with Game Genie, but whatever. Hopefully soon I'll take the time to do it for Dracula's Curse as well, and maybe I'll eventually pick up Simon's Quest too. But now the original Castlevania probably sits in my top 10 NES games, despite having no nostalgia factor to me at all.
Number 1.
Contra. This is the big one. Not only did I never play this game as a child, I never played it in college when I saw other people playing it. I also didn't prioritize it when I started collecting games. I just didn't understand the appeal. I don't remember any big maps and such in Nintendo Power, but I do remember it being a constant part of later issues as part of classified information in Counselor's Corner. Even before I started watching videos online, I knew of the Konami/Contra code, so I was aware of the impact the game had. Later on, through simple online exposure, I knew the basic layout of most of the levels before I even picked up a controller. It was a few years into retro game collecting before I played someone else's copy, and probably a few months after that I got one of my own. I wasn't able to beat it, even with the Konami code, but I made it pretty far. I intend another go in the future, but never expect the time to do a no-death run like some talented players. Well, those are the 7 NES games I never played as a child that I think are most notable. What big games did you miss out on while growing up?